Chrono Trigger is, at least to me, one of those games that just came out of nowhere and just blew my balls off. I had already been a huge fan of Japanese RPGs at the time, and had played many on the Super NES, such as Final Fantasy IV, Lufia, and Breath of Fire. But Chrono Trigger was a game that elevated it almost to next-generation quality. Then, it was an obscure gem. Today, it's part of history. So let's look at 10 facts about Chrono Trigger. Chrono Trigger was published by Squaresoft, though the developer was known as the Dream Team. It was led by Hironobu Sakaguchi and Yuji Horii. Sakaguchi created Final Fantasy, and Horii created Dragon Quest. The game also featured the designs of Akira Toriyama, creator of Dragon Ball, who had also done designs for all of the Dragon Quest games. Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest were the two most popular RPG series, hence the Dream Team. Though Square would merge with Enix after a peaceful acquisition by the latter, Sakaguchi had left Square, making the repeat performance of the Dream Team highly unlikely. Chrono Trigger is one of 3 games Square made which used ideas and assets from the original aborted version of Final Fantasy VII. Final Fantasy VII was originally envisioned for the Super NES, though it did not get past the very earliest stages of development before being changed to PlayStation. What little of the game system was used for Chrono Trigger and Treasure of the Rudras, and the plot became Parasite Eve. There are still minor Final Fantasy references in Chrono Trigger, such as the characters Biggs and Wedge, originally named after characters from Star Wars, who appeared in many Final Fantasy games. Though in Chrono Trigger's English version, Biggs is called Vix. Nearly every character in Chrono Trigger was renamed for the American release, except Chrono, of course. For example, in the original Japanese version, Marl was named Marldia, Frog was named Keiru, though to be fair that means frog, Luca was Ruka, Ayla was Ira, and Magus was Mao. Some of the changes were arbitrary changes by infamous translator Ted Woolsey. Some were changed to references to other media. Ayla, for example, was named after a cavewoman warrior from a series of novels written by Jean Avil called Earth's Children. The first book, The Clan of the Cave Bear, was adapted into a film starring Daryl Hannah, whom Ayla from Chrono Trigger has a resemblance to. Another example are the sages, Gash, Hash, and Bosch, who were renamed to Gasbar, Balthasar, and Melchior, 3 biblical figures. Chrono Trigger, in its early stages of development, was known as Maru Island and was intended to be a spin-off of the Holy Sword Legends series, known in America and Europe as the Mana series, which explains some of the similarities in graphics and animation the game has with Secret of Mana. The early version of the game also had some intriguing quirks, such as Gasbar being a member of the party, and Chrono's death being permanent, and that he'd be replaced by a younger version of himself taken out of time from before his death. Chrono Trigger was expanded on with 4 Japanese releases for the Japanese Satellaview add-on for the Super Famicom. The Jet Bike Special was basically the racing minigame from the future period. The character library was an archive of art and profiles for the game's characters. The music library was the original soundtrack in the form of a sound test, something sorely lacking from the original release. The final expansion was a visual novel called Radical Dreamer's Unstolen Jewel, which acted as a sequel. The first 3 were integrated into the PlayStation and DS versions of Chrono Trigger, and Radical Dreamers was expanded upon and reimagined as the game Chrono Cross. Here's another interesting bit of info about name changes in Chrono Trigger. In the original Japanese version, Magus' 3 generals were named Vinegar, Soy Sauce, and Mayonnaise, alluding to food items, something that is a common Japanese humor trope that Akira Toriyama was particularly fond of. As food humor is not as popular in America, the names were changed to Ozzy, Flea, and Slash. Ozzy was named after Ozzy Osbourne, Flea after the bassist from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and Slash after the guitarist from Guns N' Roses. The name Slash became very popular with Square employees who came up with a character named Slash in Chrono Cross, who was a rock star who attacked with a guitar. In the American version, Slash's name was changed to Nikki to avoid confusion. Where did the name Nikki come from? Nikki Sixx, of course. One of the biggest mysteries surrounding Chrono Trigger is the identity of the Entity, a mysterious figure that was supposedly controlling everything that the characters speak about in an iconic scene. The Entity is never mentioned again in the game, nor in Chrono Cross, making it a topic of much debate among fans. However, the Entity was never mentioned in the Japanese script and was shoehorned into the game by Ted Woolsey. So who or what was the Entity? You. You are. The Entity was meant to represent the person playing the game, who is indeed controlling everything. You know Specchio, the god of war? He hangs out at the end of time, and the party can challenge him to battles for prizes. He appears in different forms depending on what level you're at, ranging from a little Kilwala form to a super powerful looking Masamune form. While it's fairly known that getting to an extremely high level in the game will make him take the form of Anu, his most powerful form, it's not very well known that he has a rarely seen extremely weak form of a frog, which you actually have to work at to see by avoiding all non-essential battles up until that point. Though you do get some extra items for finding and beating this form, you do trigger it by specifically being weaker than you should be at that point in the game. By the way, the word Specchio is Italian for mirror, which explains why he reflects how powerful your party is. Another mystery of Chrono Trigger is after reviving Chrono, Gasbar gives you a list of side quests to do that will strengthen your party enough to destroy Lavos. However, one of these has Gasbar saying someone close to you needs help, find this person fast. There have been numerous fan theories as to who this person is, such as Marl's father or Magus' mother. However, saving Marl's father from the false trial doesn't negate the speech as completing other side quests do. And although beating the Black Omen and defeating Zeal does change Gaspar's dialogue, the line is present even if Magus was never recruited, making Zeal close to absolutely no one in the party. So what's the deal? Well, it's a translation issue. In the Japanese version, Gasbar suggests to speak to your friends at the end of time for insights into each of the side quests. The added urgency makes it seem like there's an extra quest, but really he's just saying to go talk to your friends. This actually does tie into the quest to save Marl's father, though it is thematically linked to finding the Rainbow Shell. You can't gain the Prism equipment until after saving the king, and you aren't given any direction to attempt to speak to him unless you specifically talk to Marl at the end of time. Last one, and this one has to do with the sequel. One of Chrono Trigger's biggest unanswered questions is, what becomes of Magus, and is he ever reunited with his sister? Shala, or Sarah, depending on the translation, showed up in the sequel, Chrono Cross, but Magus is largely absent, save for a brief mention in a letter from Luca, which depending on your actions may or may not be read. However, there was a character named Guile who has a similar appearance, wears a mask to hide his identity, and floats above the ground, similar to Magus. But the game never states if he is or isn't Magus. He doesn't have a unique reaction to Luca's letter, and he is only seen unmasked by a single character, an NPC in a rather obscure interaction that is very easy to miss. So here's the answer. Guile is based off of Gil, a character from Radical Dreamers who was unmasked as Magus at the end of the game. Guile's unmasking is part of the huge amount of content that was intended for Chrono Cross and left out, leaving a generic wizard character who resembles Magus but is not him in any official sort of way. As for a second sequel, Square Enix says there are a lot of politics involved with getting a third game going, and although they once registered a trademark for Chrono Break, it never flourished into anything at all, least of all a game, and the trademark lapsed without being renewed. So whether Magus gets any closure, well, that's up to you. You are, after all, the Entity.